You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Speaker Welch, thanks for having us in your office here.
Thanks for having me on your show.
We believe the economy is built from the ground up. We do. Not by big corporations who exploit national crisis for profit.
Who were you referencing on the floor? Big corporations exploiting national crisis for profit.
Well, we have numerous big corporations across this state. You probably saw a lot of them listed on the board when you walked in my office here today. But what I was really talking about was we have a budget that's going to help small businesses. This is about helping the mom and pops across our state who didn't get PPP loans last year, who were left out of the first rounds of the big grant. We're trying to help rebuild our Illinois economy by helping small businesses. And so it was more about helping small businesses than really criticizing the big corporations. But we also know the big corporations haven't really helped us.
You referenced the sign on the front of the door. I believe that talked about the lack of diversity in corporate boards. That's been a recurring theme in not just the distribution of loans, but also the update to the marijuana bill, the cannabis bill. There were right now, industry dominated by rich white men. I believe Representative LaShawn Ford told us 2 weeks ago. And now you're hoping to change that by changing the way the application deck was stacked up. Is that a theme? Is that an aim of yours? And will that continue to have more diversity in the way the state awards grants, awards funds? Why is that important to you?
Well, I think it's important for me and our entire caucus that we are a consistent voice for everyday people. And so if there's a theme, it's a theme that we're the voice for everyday people. And, you know, social equity has always been our goal in the cannabis space, right? And it didn't happen after the initial law was passed. And so we have heard from constituents and advocates for months regarding the social equity piece and black and brown people being left out. So this was an important piece of legislation for us to get done this session, and I think Rep. Ford did an excellent job working with former Senator Toy Hutchinson in the governor's office and the advocates and getting a great piece of legislation done that we do believe is going to help increase the diversity in the cannabis space.
It seems the intent of lawmakers can be to help everyday people, but there are still always going to be insiders who just know how to work the levers of government to their advantage a little bit better.
Well, that's true, but our goal is to put some policy in place that makes it more difficult for the insiders to take advantage of it and make it easier for the everyday people. Do you always get it right? You know, sometimes you have to take a step back and figure out how to make it even better. And hopefully this makes the initial law better.
Republicans complained that the budget directs about $1 billion of federal funds, coronavirus relief funds, to Democratic districts, leaving them and their millions of constituents behind.
Our constituents represent millions of Illinoisans, millions. And so while the Democrats were out there taking a bunch of pork for themselves, our constituents were largely shut out. And for what? And for what? So they give themselves a pay raise.
How do you respond to that?
You know, Republicans complain a lot, Mark. And, you know, you have to be at the table and participatory in the process. They like to push away from the process and then complain about what they don't get. Similarly with redistricting. They never even offer their own map, but they complain about somehow the maps screwed them. You have to participate in a process that you want to be included in. You can't constantly push yourself away from the table and expect to be included. That's the nature of how this business works.
To use your words, did the maps screw Republicans?
I don't believe so. I think these maps, you know, as a renowned expert said, is a model for minority representation. And what these maps do is include minority representation. I said all along from day one that diversity is the strength of our state and that any fair map would have to truly be reflective of that. You look at those maps, that's what's included. And we got to be proud of that.
When the court looks at maps, which we expect they will, the recent precedent has been that's the metric that they use. You can't gerrymander to dilute minority communities or voters of color. You can't use those lines to chop up different communities of interest. But the courts have said you can gerrymander for political gain. They've pretty much spelled that out. Isn't that part of what's going on here? Do you see any? I mean, Democrats want to elect Democrats, don't they?
Drawing maps certainly has a political component to it. However, there are several redistricting laws that have to be taken into concern when you're drawing maps. And most important of them all is the Voting Rights Act. To accommodate the issues that are contained within the Voting Rights Act, there is going to be a component of gerrymandering because Voting Rights Act makes sure you maximize minority representation. And that's what we did here. We comply with the Voting Rights Act, and we should be proud of the fact that we were able to accomplish those things. And I think it's also important to point out that the 2021 maps look very similar to the 2011 map. Obviously, there's some changes in there.
Population has shifted.
Population has shifted a bit, but for the most part, there's a lot of similarities. And we know a court has looked at that 2011 map and have said that that was legal.
In 2016 and in recent years, when you supported a push for independent commissions to draw maps, you were serving here in the 7th District. We're in your district office today, but now do you feel an obligation to the entire state as House Speaker, and is that what shifted your perspective? Because I mean, now you have members to look out for downstate who might have districts where they feel they would be more at risk if there were more Republican voters in their district. I mean, is that what shifted your position here, that now you're in a different role?
Well, I don't think my position has shifted. If you read my entire op-ed from 2016, I talk about ensuring minority representation, ensuring that one person, one vote, and that's extremely important.
Could an independent commission not accomplish that?
Well, let me finish my answer, because I inherited this new job on January 13th. We have a constitutional deadline of June 30th. There is absolutely no way of getting to an independent commission without ignoring our constitutional obligation. And I took 2 oaths on January 13th, and that was to follow the Illinois Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. I did that twice on January 13th, and the Republicans were asking us to ignore our constitutional mandate to draw maps by June 30th. That's what we did.
Along with the offer, though, that if you went to this overtime toward the bipartisan commission, that's a distinction from an independent one, they have offered to allow an independent commission to draw the maps. That independent commission would hand it to the constitutionally required, it being the map. They would hand the map to the bipartisan commission, and Republicans have said, we'll sign that one. Do you not trust them to do that?
No.
There's a bit of a trust deficit then.
We're Democrats, they're Republicans. There are key differences in us. We believe in different core values. Across this country, Republicans are making it a part of their party platform to disenfranchise voters. They believe in voter suppression. We believe in letting the people vote. We believe more participation in our democracy is important. They want less. And so do I believe that a party that wants less voter participation is going to do the right thing when it comes to our maps? Of course not. But the most important thing to do here was to follow our constitutional mandate.
It's interesting to hear your perspective after the completion of this first session. Right at the start, when lawmakers came back after that brief hiatus in the early part of session, committees seemed to approve bills left and right. Part of that, I think, was a backlog of bills that had built up during the year we were off. But some of your colleagues in the House felt free. Your predecessor was a bit more controlling of the process. Is it your intent to be more hands-off, and why?
Well, I go back to that statement about democracy. I think that it's important to let the process play out. One of the things that members talked about during the race for Speaker was having more say in our process. I believe in that, and having been a rank and file member for 8 years and knowing exactly what they were talking about, I promised more input, more say, more empowerment of our members. That's what they got, and that's how we're going to continue to operate.
I don't know that it's going the same way in the Senate.
I can't speak for the Senate. I'm Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm Speaker of the House, I'm going to work with our members, both Democrats and Republicans, and try to move things in a positive direction.
We've covered a lot of what the House and Senate have accomplished, but the one big elephant left in the room is the one thing that you didn't get done, energy. What happened there?
Well, we were close. We almost got it done that night, believe it or not, on Monday, the 31st. But we're going to get it done. Energy is a complex issue. It's not easy. But the governor and Exelon have reached a deal in principle. Now it's being drafted up, and T's are being crossed, I's are being dotted, and we're already polling members for possible dates to return for a special session because that's important to us, and we're going to get it done.
Someone has to pay for the transition to cleaner energy. It's going to cost someone. Why should taxpayers or homeowners or ratepayers pick up the tab when it was polluters, namely natural gas and coal, who made the mess? Why should someone else pay for the mess they created?
Well, listen, Mark, I believe in many of the principles of clean energy. And in order to get there, in many instances, you got to pay for it. How we actually pay for it, the details will be spelled out in the proposal that comes forward. And I don't want to get ahead of that process.
Well, our reporting is that the governor's proposed carbon tax, which I believe you supported, had to come out of that deal to get it done.
That's correct.
Why, if we're already going to tell coal and natural gas, hey, your days are numbered, we'll move away from you, we're going to phase you out, we can't pay for the transition to cleaner energy with a carbon tax in the process?
Well, I think it's a fair proposal that's going to come forward. I don't want to get ahead of that proposal.
That's going to cost ratepayers more.
I don't want to get ahead of the proposal, but I think it's a compromise deal that I think everyone's going to be happy with. This is very important because it accomplishes our clean energy goals in this state. And Exelon agreed. It's also going to contain ethics language in the energy space. In addition to the ethics proposal that we passed, there's going to be ethics language contained in this proposal. I think when it's all out there on the table for the folks to see in the next few days, people will be pleased with the result.
You mentioned ethics. You also passed an ethics bill that has a revolving door ban of 6 months. Once a lawmaker leaves office, they have to wait 6 months for a cooling off period. Should the governor sign this, we expect he will. State government workers have a longer revolving door ban of a full year. Sometimes that revolving door swings both ways. It's not always the people who leave government to go into lobbying. Sometimes they leave lobbying and go into government. That was the case for Senate President Harmon's Chief of Staff, Jacob Butcher, who lobbied for Prairie State, the biggest coal plant polluter in our state.
I have been fighting for renewable energy for my entire time here in Springfield. I fought for renewable energy when people laughed at me for fighting for it. So the notion that I am somehow holding up an energy bill on behalf of a fossil fuel provider is laughable. At the same time, as a Senate President, I have a responsibility to my caucus, and many members of my caucus have been relying on the framework that the Energy Working Group had articulated on municipal and co-op facilities. The governor's agreement with Exelon was a significant departure from that framework.
Were you comfortable with how close he was to the coal industry during these energy talks?
Well, I think there's some always things that we can do better. I think that we need to take a look at what we've done in the past and see if we can do things better. That's just how I operate. Again, I know in the House we are doing things to try to rebuild trust in what we do. I certainly can't tell the Senate how to do their job, but I would certainly hope that they're on the same page as we are with putting things in place so that people can start to trust us again.
People pretty close to that negotiation were frustrated. They thought there was a deal ready to go, and the Senate was the sticking point on the carbon tax. Would it be just a coincidence that a coal lobbyist just a year ago was now in government working against a carbon tax that would cost his former clients money?
Mark, let me say this. We were close that night. We were almost done. Some things did come up at the end of the night that prevented the deal from being done that night. But the deal is done now. We're going to return. Both chambers are going to vote on it. I will tell you, going forward, I think both chambers need to continue to do better. when it comes to putting some processes in place so people trust what we do.
There was one other thing that did not get completed just yet, and that was fixing the FOID card. Where are you at? Where is your caucus at on mandatory fingerprints or voluntary fingerprints to get this done?
Well, our caucus passed a bill.
Mandatory fingerprints.
Over to the Senate that said mandatory fingerprints. We have a lot of people in our caucus that support that. We also received a bill from the Senate that didn't include that, but has a lot of other good things in it. And so we're talking to our members and polling, seeing if the numbers are there to vote on that one. But I expect some action on that in the coming days as well.
I think it's important to reflect back on this session and also learn a little bit about your thinking, your negotiation style. Every time a new speaker takes the helm, it's interesting to learn their perspective on how they see the power of the position and what you can do with it. I know you're always going to be viewed in the light of your predecessor. I think he was there for a long time. Yeah. He was called the Velvet Hammer. I think that implied he had a soft touch but could negotiate behind the scenes. Are you different from him in some way, and how do you view your job now that you've tried it on for size for a bit?
Well, I mean, I think I'm very different from Speaker Madigan. I think that just by the nature of who we are, we're different. I mean, I'm a black guy in America. Our life experiences are different. So my approach to government is a lot different. I think I am a little bit more open and accessible, but I'm new. You know, I'm hoping that I can continue down this way, just being me, right? And that's all I know how to do things, is to just be me. Are there some things that we're going to do different? I think so. I think we've already shown some of those things this first session. As we assess, we're going to probably make some more changes here and there. But by and large, I'm very happy where we're headed.
Politics can, it's not beanbag, right? So it can always be a little bit personal. But if your hands-off approach, I don't know if it was the hands-off approach that led to some of the fights from the Democratic caucus spilling over onto the floor debate. We saw that a couple times down the stretch between Rep. Tara Costa-Howard and Rep. Ammons, and then between Rep. Tarver and Rep. Slaughter. Are you happy to just let these fights take place on the open floor, or wouldn't you rather keep that in caucus behind closed doors? Listen,
we're a diverse caucus. Diversity is the strength of our state. When you have diversity, you have diversity of thought. And in democracy, you have to let people have debate.
What's the line between a diverse caucus and a divided caucus?
Well, we're not divided. I think people can see that we're not divided. We had a very successful session. You don't accomplish the things that we did by being divided. This is a very united caucus, but we're geographically diverse, racially diverse, culturally diverse, and just diversity is a great thing within us. It's one of our strengths. But with that comes differences. And we're not going to stifle debate. I think that's important. And I think if you look back on previous General Assemblies, we've had some nice spirited debates on the floor of the House of Representatives. That's nothing new. And I'm not going to step in and stifle debate. That's just not my style. And all I ask our colleagues to do is keep it professional.
Was that a reference to Representative Ammons?
That was a reference to, in general, just keep it professional.
I hear you. Moving forward, this our last question here. This budget, Democrats tell us it's balanced. There's money left over. Coming out of the pandemic, I think a lot of people thought that would be very hard to achieve. Is that a sign that we didn't need the progressive income tax?
Well, I think the progressive income tax was about long-term fiscal health. We were able to do some things this year because we had better revenue projections, revenue than we thought. We had some help from the federal government, which we believe is one-time help. But for long-term fiscal health, there's going to be some challenges ahead down the road. Yet another reason why we didn't spend all of the ARPA money at one time. I think that's extremely important to point out, that we saved money. Many people don't believe Democrats can save money. We did. We didn't spend it all at once because we're looking down the road and trying to plan for year 2, year 3, year 4. Hopefully as we continue to move down the road, there'll be some other structural fixes that we can do.
Anything on pensions?
Hopefully.
How do you get at that?
We don't know yet, but we're certainly got great.
Just a few more years, we'll figure it out.
We got some great minds looking at it now, and hopefully, we'll have some ideas coming forward soon.
All right, Speaker Welch, thanks for having us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Our entire interview with Speaker Welch is up on our website. You can find it there. When we come back, we sit down one-on-one with Governor Pritzker in his Chicago office to find out if he thinks these maps are fair.